Two Joes.
Two Joes.
All right. And as Aaron Peskin said, are you ready for a mature discussion about our future?
He said lots of things.
He says he has said lots of things. Some of them we'll review here tonight. Well, thank you all for being here. It's a very exciting election. It's, honestly, it's the best election in the state. I usually don't do city politics. You're the city politics expert. So, but I'm like, wow, that's one that I'd rather cover than just about anything else here. So we're going to talk about that. And why don't we start by, for people who are very new, who are the top candidates?
The joke I like to tell is that it's kind of like a Little League baseball team, and that after the first five, the talent kind of drops off. But you have the mayor herself, London Breed. You have Asha Safai, the District 11 supervisor. You have former mayor and former supervisor Mark Farrell. You have philanthropist and heirs of the Levi Strauss fortune and Tipping Point founder Daniel Lurie, and recently you have board president and once and always supervisor Aaron Peskin. And the date is June 11th. That's the date you have to circle on your calendar because that's when there's the hard cutoff and there will be no more people.
But we don't expect anyone else to get in at this point. You have to have superior name recognition and deep pockets, preferably both.
You would, and the only name that you would think of as even being a potential possibility would be David Chu, the city attorney. But I think if he was going to come in, he'd have done it by now.
And I think we've all asked David Chu that question at least 600 or 700 times.
Yeah, and he studiously says that he's looking forward to being re-elected city attorney.
Yes, and he will be.
Mm-hmm.
All right, let's talk about something. I know whenever I say talk about money, people are like, oh, we always talk about money, but it is very powerful, and it is we have to talk about it and sort of give you the parameters about how much everybody has. So I'm just going to go through real quick what people have raised so far, with the caveat that we don't know what a couple of the candidates have raised officially because they've not said so yet, or they haven't had to file official campaign papers. So far. London Breed's campaign has raised about $658,000. An IE supporting her has raised about $265,000. Safai's campaign has raised $333,000. He doesn't have an IE yet.
What's an IE?
Oh, I'm sorry. Thank you for a good question. It's an independent expenditure, and they can raise, unlike city funds, individuals can only give $500 per individual to a campaign. But IEs,
it's whatever you want.
Is that like a PAC?
It is not like a PAC. It is a PAC.
Yeah. And so that's where we're going to see the numbers go off the charts. Daniel Lurie's campaign has raised $520,000. His IE has raised $3.2 million. Yes, and $1.1 million from
His mom. Yeah.
Boy, this crowd knows their campaign finance dashboard. Now, Mark Farrell, we don't know. He has said he's raised $350,000.
Mm-hmm.
I was in touch. You had conversations with some people about money today, and I just in touch with the campaign. I said, "How much has he raised? Can you give me a number?" And they said, "More than anyone else," but not any more specific. Do you have anything more about Mark Farrell?
Well,
or anything else about money?
The fact is that these are pretty good numbers, right? And this is not an open race. And so that tells you a lot about what people are thinking in San Francisco. When Gavin Newsom was running in 2007 against, assorted, well-meaning people, lunatics and well-meaning lunatics, there was no money to be raised, even when it was abundantly clear that no one was going to knock him off. So in this case, the fact that donors are writing checks, this isn't Bitcoin, they know who you are, and are willing to give largely against the mayor, tells you a lot about how people are thinking in San Francisco among those who give money.
And the SF Standard, our friends over there, reported today that Peskin has raised $150,000 in the first month. And he hasn't formed an IE, but we expect labor to come in big on him.
It's happening, and nobody is making any bones about it. They're eating in restaurants. People can see them. They're talking about it openly. Nobody is afraid of repercussions for giving money to people who are running against the incumbent.
And in San Francisco, you can also get qualified for public financing. Mayoral candidates can get up to $1.2 million. for non-incumbents and 1.2 million for incumbents. What's the point of diminishing returns for money? There's only so many voters in San Francisco in this 7x7 space. How much of a factor will it be? I mean, some of these people, the nerd class in here knows who Daniel Lurie is, but many San Franciscans don't. They know who Safai is, but many people don't. But can there be too much money? Can they spend all this money? I guess.
Yes, absolutely. You can have too much money. I think that in Los Angeles it results in unnecessary plastic surgery. Here it results in unnecessary candidacies. You cannot win on the basis of money alone. But for someone like Daniel Lurie, who's not particularly well known outside of the philanthropy world, he's not Mark Benioff. If Mark Benioff decided that he wanted to run for mayor, people knew who he is, even though nobody knows what Salesforce does. It's a very, one of these days, what do you do in this building? It's a perpetual motion machine, yeah. So for someone like Daniel Lurie, he will need to use that money in order to spread his message and to tell people like, I'm Daniel Lurie. Yes, the guy next to you, that's me. For someone like Aaron Peskin, his name recognition isn't as great as you would think it is for being constantly in politics for the last 25 years, but you need a certain amount of money. And so what people have always told me is that in San Francisco, you need to have enough money. So for example, a couple of years ago, Proposition I, which taxes people who are selling real estate at more than $10 million. So you're taxing not the buyer, but the seller, who's selling something for $10 million or more, which is not exactly, and certainly the realtors and neighbors and others tried to fight it, but this is a hard one to fight in San Francisco because you're saying, wait, the poor guy who just sold something for $10 million has to pay a little more taxes towards affordable housing. This is an intuitive yes for San Francisco voters, and it was outspent something like $5 or $6 million to about $300,000, but $300,000 is enough. It's enough money to spread your message, and that's all you need. So in San Francisco, we have to figure out what is enough money for each of these candidates. As Joe very astutely brought up, the matching funds from public financing are what's important here. Aaron Peskin only has to make so much money before he gets tripled, I think. Is it tripled or is it sextupled? I don't know. It's a big multiplier. So $300,000 becomes $1 million very quickly.
And then we have to keep an eye on the big money going to the IEs. Not only is labor, but here just wanted to throw out a few of the names who are giving big money to the IEs so far that we've seen in public. Of course, Lurie's mom, Miriam Haas, $1 million. Jan Koum, the co-founder of WhatsApp, $250,000 for Lurie. Oleg Nodelman, wealthy biotech investor, $253,000. Why 53,000? I always wonder why. Why do people not give rounded numbers? It's what? Oh, three's the
could be. It's like a bar mitzvah donation. It's always a multiple of 18. So I don't know, but these are big checks to drop.
Yes, Michael Bloomberg, $200,000 for London Breed. Fun fact: Breed endorsed Bloomberg for Mr. Stop and Frisk for mayor or for president in 2020. Chris Larson, crypto billionaire. He's not registered giving anything so far, but he gave $750,000 to Mayor Breed's ballot measures on the March 5th ballot. 49er Hall of Famer Ronnie Lott, $3,000 for Daniel Lurie.
Oh, wow.
He also spoke at his launch. You saw that, yes.
It's an amazing second career for Ronnie Lott, who used to be the most intimidating man in pro football. And as an aside here, the worst feature I ever saw was that the loser of the Super Bowl in 2012, that they would give away free pudding in your city. It's for loser pudding. And they had Ronnie Lott handing out pudding in Chinatown, and he was bum rushed by dozens of Chinese elders who just took it away from him. And it was amazing to watch the most intimidating man in football, who had part of his pinky removed so he could play the game, get bum rushed by septuagenarians with no bags. So yeah. Nice to see him, participating in public.
But when he spoke at Lurie's launch, he was like, a whisper, this guy is good. This guy. It was pin drop quiet in there because people were like, oh my God, it's Ronnie Lott. Okay. Tony West, a couple more. Tony West, brother-in-law of Vice President Harris, $500 for London Breed, which is kind of cheap. Tony West used to head Uber here in San Francisco.
Former general counsel for Uber.
Yeah, come on. And Ashay Safai's mom. he told you this. How
I
much
think he
did
gave 50. She gave like 50
100,
bucks.
150 bucks.
150 bucks. Yeah.
Yes,
But more is coming. You don't want to max out in one cycle. You don't want to max out in one cycle. So that's There's tremendous money involved. There's going to be tremendous money involved, and you know I'm guessing because you've come out to watch Joe and Joe on a Tuesday night, you follow these things. And at Mission Local, which by the way, speaking of tremendous money, I failed to say you can go to missionlocal.org and you can donate to us. And this is a matching month. Everything goes double, up to $25,000. So please think about that and subscribe to the Chronicle, which apparently only costs $0.25.
It only costs $0.25
Yeah.
for the first 10 minutes.
It's a very good quarter. Yeah. So we've written a lot about money and politics in San Francisco, and it's very difficult to do because there is a virtual matryoshka of interlocking, like-minded organizations that have many of the same board members, and some of them are housed out of the same offices. And the money circulates around. People will give to other organizations, and the money kind of circulates. If you remember in the Hunt for Red October, how they always went in a serpentine pattern, so you couldn't quite be seen. And I think it's for that reason. It's harder to trace the money when they don't just directly give it. So what the big money organizations do well loom large, and people are much more organized than they used to be. It used to be that you would say that scruffy progressive organizers, many of whom come out of labor and ought to know about organizing, would have a better campaign on the ground. But that's no longer the case. Certainly, you can do worse than copying the playbook of the people who beat you repeatedly with limited funds and then having much, much more money. Having much, much more money, to get back to your original question, never hurts. And if you can recapitulate everything that the other guy's doing and have much more money so that you can make mistakes, so that you can do more, so that you can bring in better assassins, you will be able to succeed better.
Let's move on from assassins to talk about endorsements. Which ones are going to matter? We talked a little bit. We started talking about labor, and they've already started to roll out. Asha Safai's gotten the teachers.
So did Aaron, apparently.
It was the dreaded dual endorsement. That's so weak.
I don't think, and you will have to tell me how much that matters to you. I don't know that the teacher's endorsement carries that much water in a mayor's race. It might in a board of education race, and I don't know how much residual anger there is with the teachers union because of COVID behavior. We'll see about that. What Joe and I were discussing, I think the big endorsement to get, and you know, this is, you know, there are lots of ways to win, and the money that will come in this race is going to flatten things out a bit. But I think the firefighters is the endorsement that everybody really covets, because everybody likes firefighters. You know, firefighters, the polling I saw, over 90%. Everybody likes firefighters, because when you call the firefighters, they put the fire out at your house. They never come and light your house on fire. You know, like it's very straightforward, and even, you know, my son's Boy Scout troop meets in the firefighters union hall, and they have all the old fire trucks, and people get weak-kneed about this. And it's a big deal. And not only do firefighters put a lot of money into who they wish for their endorsements, they get out there and they put people on the ground. And unlike police, which also can be very politically active, you know, you cannot send police around knocking on people's doors. You cannot do this. Whereas like if a firefighter knocks on your doors, otherwise people are thrilled. You know, no one, is the pilot light on? Like it's, people are thrilled to have firefighters come, right? So that's going to be a fairly big endorsement. And Joe and I were talking about this. The firefighters were very strong backers of London Breed in 2018. It was a difference maker. You know, London Breed had more money than Jane Kim and Mark Leno, but you know, she outperformed while not doing a ranked choice strategy, which rarely works out. Very rarely does it work out to ignore the strategy of the election you're in. You know, the joke I like to say is if you show up in a rugby outfit for a football game, you will lose. And in this case, she decided, like, I'm better enough at this that I could do that. And she had enough of an advantage in the first place votes that she was able to hold on for what I don't think people remember how close a vote that was. It was
close after Leno and Jane Kim formed an alliance.
But that's how ranked choice voting works. And you know,
have to do it.
I don't want to give you a hard time, but your newspaper said that Jane Kim and Mark Leno were trying to game the system without, that is an old.
Mark Leno just told me that again. Like, let it go. It was 6 years ago.
It was first of all,
8 years ago.
First of all, it was the op-ed department.
It was the op-ed. It was not us.
Someone had to explain at the time.
Emily, are you here?
That is the system.
There you go. Way to back up.
That is the system. You know, having alliances like that is the system. That is how that works. It's like if if you're playing Risk or something like that, you know, you make alliances. That is part of the deal. And like we will see it this time. The more right-leaning candidates would be ill-advised to each strike out on their own path.
Should we talk about ranked choice voting now?
No. I mean, if you want to.
Yes? Oh wow. This is a nerdy crowd when they're calling out for ranked
I can
choice.
take the nerdiness even higher, because the example I like to use for ranked choice voting is the difference between college physics and high school physics, right? And if you ever take two of them, like college physics is very different than high school physics, and you have to unlearn a lot of what you learned because high school physics, everything works out nice and neatly. And so the high school physics of ranked choice voting is who's your favorite choice? We'll vote for them first. And who's your second favorite choice? Vote for them second. And who's your third favorite choice? And on. Because does anyone know how many votes you get for mayor this time? 10. You get 10 votes,
So
right?
you can write it in 10 vote, up to 10 people. Of course, as Joe says, after the top 5, the talent drops off.
No, one of them is here. Let's say the top 6.
Top 6.
Yep.
Top 6. All right, there we go.
Mike Lynn is running for mayor. So so after the top 6, it's if you were to write in, your father-in-law or whatever, it's the chances of someone coming from 6th place, is low. So
and let's walk through for people who are unfamiliar with it. After the first round of voting, you cast your ballots and they're counted, and the person who is in last place, they drop out, and then their second place votes go to, and third place votes and fourth place votes go to the other candidates who are still in the race, and so on and so on and so on until someone gets 50% plus 1 vote. Okay? I'm sorry?
Well, there's always the expression that democracy is the worst system except for all the rest. Before this, we would just take the top 2 and then have a runoff that was almost always ill-attended. And so in a crowded field like this, we can argue about the sense of finality one has with a runoff vote where you have A versus B. And if in this case you were going to have like Aaron Peskin versus the mayor or versus Mark Farrell, you'd have a very clear choice of the left versus the right. But it doesn't always work out that way. And so another name for ranked choice voting is instant runoff voting. Ostensibly, if you are keeping in mind who do I want first, who do I want second, this is how it's going to work out. People do recoil looking at the way the data looks well into the permutations of ranked choice voting. Unless you are a data person, unless you love analytics and whatnot, and can tell me all about why Scott Hatteberg is the best first baseman of all time because of his OPS. This data looks very difficult because there's lots of red and lots of things moving around. But as Joe said, it's not complicated in theory, it's more complicated in practice. I mean, most all of you probably know how to drive a car. You do not know how to fix an engine. And so in this case, you know how to drive a car. You know how to go from point A to point B. That's voting. How they crunch the votes afterwards is, internal combustion engines. And then that's the case. And no, they're not stealing your votes. And no, there's the Department of Elections is one of the few departments in San Francisco we can say is a well-oiled machine, to continue the automotive metaphor. So if you want to just vote for your favorite 3 or 10, there's nothing wrong with that. But there are other ways that you can vote in order to vote defensively. I don't want this guy to be the mayor, so I'm gonna vote for these people. Yeah.
And the teams will form, like if they do form later in the election. We're already talking. Oh, how are you going to game the system now? Nobody knows, because you don't know how the campaign's going to roll out. But we have some early indications of about how it could game out. With Chronicle, we did a poll, February, I guess, right? February, yeah. And who could this help the most? Daniel Lurie won the most second place votes, so he was everybody's second choice, kind of like some of us at the prom. Said he won 24% of the second place votes. Who will it hurt? London Breed. She was 35% of the respondents said Breed would be their 4th choice. I mean,
the polling that Joe was mentioning, I don't think I can overstate how bad this polling is for London Breed.
This did not include. This was before Peskin jumped in for FY. Farrell was in on this.
Farrell was in, so Lurie's people will say that Farrell had a bump because he was the new flavor of the month. But regardless, what we can look at is that London Breed is doing very badly in this poll, and I think she had a 71% unfavorable, which is about as high as it gets. And if you look at it across all the demographics, it becomes it becomes ruinous. I believe it was 67% did unfavorable among whites, 69% among blacks, 80% among Asians.
80 is the bad number.
This is a bad number, and so getting back to ranked choice voting, a number of people have, at least at this point, people may turn around and think differently, but at least at this point, people said, I am not voting for London Breed again. And that means you're not picking up number twos. And it's also, voters behave counterintuitively all the time, and all of the politicos I talk to say, we tell you and tell you and tell you who this person stands for, who that person is, and you vote. How many people voted for Nancy Tung for DA and then Chesa Boudin? It doesn't make sense. People do these things. But London Breed is a known quantity. She's the 6-year incumbent. And a lot of people are just not going to say, well, I'm going to vote for someone else like Mark Farrell or Daniel Lurie, and then I'll come back to her third. That is a counterintuitive thing to do. So her being this far down is just very bad sign.
And in terms of teaming up, no one's going to want to team up with the mayor.
Well, she doesn't want to team up with them. The mayor won without a ranked choice strategy last time. The mayor's people believe that a ranked choice strategy is a clandestine Mark Farrell black, false flag to get him because he can't win without it. And meanwhile you have Cassandra's on the moderate side saying if we don't team up against Aaron Peskin, you're all but writing his inauguration speech for him, and we'll just have to see how that goes.
Yeah, that's the thing. Do they team up in an anybody but Peskin strategy? Would that work?
I think it is hard to do with the mayor because, again, a lot of people have just said, I'm not voting for the mayor. Now, her numbers could get better, and this is the thing that's kind of looming over everybody. June 11th is that big date. If June 11th is that big date, no one's going to spend money on a poll between now and June 11th because suddenly your poll could be worthless if indeed, out of the blue, whose music is that? That's David Chu's music, and he jumps in, right? So when there's more polls, will probably drop.
David Chu have music? He would.
David Chu is a former musician.
I don't see. Really? I did not know that.
He had a double bass in his office. You remember?
I did not know. I did not know that.
So I think around June, mid-June, you'll probably see more polls, and if the mayor's numbers aren't dramatically better, this is a bad sign. You don't need me or Joe to tell you that her numbers are going to do three things. They're going to get better, they're going to get worse, or they're going to stay the same. And only one of those is good, right? So if her numbers are better and dramatically better, then that changes the equation. But if her numbers are about the same or worse, that's really bad. That's gaining weight on a diet, so to speak, right? So that's just really bad. And then you will probably also see donor behavior affect that. The Chronicle poll was incredibly damning and was also very professionally done and played very well in the paper, I thought. And so who's to know what voters are going to be thinking by June 11th?
Well, let's talk about some of the people who could help them. And we had started talking about endorsers, and we talked about labor. Like, what about
Pandas.
What? Pandas? They're not coming. They're not coming by election day. So Pandas ain't gonna save her.
Did they help Nixon?
They did actually. What about, like, we were talking about other sort of out of big name endorsers? Newsom, he's not going to get involved.
Newsom is not going to get involved, though. I think would anybody here be surprised to know that Gavin Newsom and Aaron Peskin do not exchange holiday cards? I'm certain that Gavin Newsom would.
His wife works for Governor Newsom.
Yeah, she does. So, in this case, Gavin Newsom. You can bet your bottom dollar he does not want Aaron Peskin to be the mayor. That does not necessarily mean he's going to jump in for anybody else.
There's no win for him there. Same with Pelosi. I don't see her jumping in. I mean, for what she usually doesn't get involved in Dem on Dem skirmishes. So, is there? Let's talk about some of the organizations that will have money and will have people power in this race, and has certainly have building a track record of success, and that's all the SFs. The organizations. Well, let's start with one that's been in the news recently. Neighbors for a Better San Francisco. And this is the one for folks who don't know. When we say the SFs, there have a number of organizations that have sprung up over the last several years in San Francisco. They've raised millions and millions of dollars. Much of the money is coming from tech interests or venture capitalist interests, and that is what we saw. The fruits of their labor we've seen recently in recall of Chesa Boudin, the recall of school board, this past March, we saw the 3 ballot measures, or more moderate ballot
I will
measures.
slightly differ. They raised the neighbors contributed the majority of the money to recall Chase Boudin. However, I feel they really did hitch their wagon to a rocket with the school board. And people on the left and people on the right, always talk past each other, one another in the school board. Yes, there was a national movement to target left-leaning school board members, and that's definitely true. On the other hand, you have to be a little bit myopic to ignore the incredibly gauche behavior of members of the school board who made this very easy to do, and they could have been recalled for $10. And if not for the behavior of Allison Collins, this would have been a fringe movement of angry people online. So the money dropping in there, I think it definitely helped. But I think that all of the money for the school board, unless I'm mistaken, from neighbors, came in the last several weeks.
And people also say that this was a Republican-fueled effort. Let's be real. The people who vote in San Francisco are not Republicans.
No, but the money is. So in this case,
money is some of the money is Republican.
The money from neighbors is coming from people who either are Republicans or hedge their bets primarily. And you can, but the thing that we found, and we've written a lot about the donors in San Francisco, I don't think "look who's paying for their campaign" has worked out very well as a campaign argument. And we saw that with the DCCC, the Democratic County Central Committee votes in March. The basis of the progressive campaign was these guys are funded by clandestine Republicans and are handpicked by shady people in a boardroom, real estate interests, business interests, tech interests. But the people who were indeed handpicked in a boardroom and funded by those folks had proactive things to say about what are the problems in the city. And you could, I can argue and say these are asinine views and this is very shallow, but at least it's a view, right? I mean, I'm cribbing from myself, but there's always a line from The Big Lebowski, and the one here is "say what you will, but it is an ethos." So say what you will, it is an ethos. I'm leaving out part of it. But in this case, you have to do better in San Francisco. I think we've proven than saying they're funded by bad people.
Right. That's not a winning argument. We've seen it three times now, three times with the ones I just mentioned. Aaron said it in his launch speech. He said everyone's got their own billionaire. True, but I don't think that's going to sway. That's not going to sway swing voters at this point.
But it will. This is the mayor, and ranked choice voting, you need to get a chunk of people, and so you have to start doing the math. The people for who that's important for will probably be voting for Aaron Peskin, and then he has to work the margins elsewhere, right? And like every mayoral candidate, he has plans, and they all have plans.
Okay, well let's talk about Neighbors for a Better San Francisco. They spent $9 million since 2020, including $600,000 from Republican donor Bill Obendorf. They're in some trouble right now. Do you want to go there?
Deep trouble.
Yeah.
So we can start with Neighbors, which is founded by a politico named Jay Cheng and also Mary Jung, who's a real estate lobbyist and former head of the Democratic Party. And this is basically almost like a boutique investment firm for big donors that we'll take your money and we'll donate it to the place that it's supposed to go. And they're in trouble because this is a little bit of Icarus flying too close to the sun, I think, that the hand-picked slate by Jay Cheng of the DCCC members that they put into office is now deciding to focus on allegations of sexual impropriety, when everybody in town knows that a dozen years ago when he was in college, he was arrested on sexual assault charges. So this is something everybody knew. Yeah,
the charges were dropped.
The charges. Well, there were no charges, but he wrote emails to the alleged victim, apologizing in his own words for "I'm sorry, I attempted to rape you." My understanding is there are also phone calls that the police had, and there were no charges made. So we can say he was never adjudicated. They dropped the charges. This is a bad look, and I can tell you that this is not where I would have wanted my hand-picked slate of candidates to go. It all but forced the issue into the public light, and this wouldn't have been relevant otherwise.
Well, that's not their only problem, too. They also have
coordination issues.
Yeah, independent expenditure committees, campaigns cannot coordinate. So it's been
So
reported.
the Standard did a very good job in that they got they obtained a text message in which Jay Chang to a
and my colleague JD.
yes, I'm sorry, JD.
Yes.
I think JD. Did you get that one, JD?
He got that one.
Okay,
He got that one
so
first, yeah.
good on JD. He got the text message where Jay Chang was acting as if, for all the world, he was running Mark Farrell's campaign and said, "We'll hold the job open for you." You can't do that because that means that you're not an independent expenditure anymore. You know. So if it's found that you're coordinating, now this is the question that we're all scrambling on. The wheels of justice move very slowly here. So you can make the expenditures, and then people can come and say, "Well, you shouldn't have done that. And here's a fine." But by then, the election has been decided.
Here's a
But
fine of $15,000.
Yeah, I mean, it would be more, but this is the thing. The money is not an object here.
No, not when you're spending millions. No.
So if it is found that neighbors or the one that we'll get to next, Together SF, are not independent expenditure campaigns, that limits their ability to make independent expenditures.
And if they're sidelined, who does that hurt?
It hurts Mark Farrell grievously.
There are many folks who are with the Together SF action and Together SF, and there's sort of been a cross-pollination between those two groups. There are people who have worked in one and worked in the other. Mm-hmm. So that's going to be a challenge. If they're sidelined, that's going to be. But what are the chances of those guys just sitting out and sort of preemptively saying, well, maybe we'll sit this out? They're talking about it because they have other ballot measures that are slated to go on the ballot in the fall that have, should we say, nothing to do with the mayor's race, and they're about the power of the mayor, but they don't name they're not in favor of his candidate.
There's always an extra way of doing things, and when you put ballot measures up for people to vote for, you can only donate $500 towards a candidate. But if that candidate says, "Hey, there's a ballot measure that I'm running on, and these ads will go out for Proposition A, and they'll have my picture on them," you can give as much money as you want. And this is not a new thing. This is a very old thing. Our governor did this, a political generation ago. And so, Aaron Peskin has said he wants to put the Inspector General measure on the ballot. And he could do this. This could be, the anti-corruption measure that that has his picture on it, and somebody could donate endless amounts of money. Mark Farrell already started up a committee to run on the two Together SF measures. So the fact that they dropped one of them when he's already done this indicates some level of political blundering.
And we saw the fruits of this in the March primary. The mayor had their 3 ballot measures on there, and that wasn't part of her campaign. But she got to front them, and she got to bask in the glory of that. And we'll see if there's what the bump, if any, in the polls was for.
I don't quite understand that one. I don't think that anyone would really be able to campaign on Props E and F in November. But they definitely won. Wasn't close.
Okay, let's talk about what do you want to talk about next? Grow SF. They have not picked a mayoral candidate yet. They're mostly focused on the supervisors. And then Abundant SF is why is that a giggle?
Because there's so many of them.
Abundant SF is they're totally in the tank for Breed.
Well, I don't think they've made any bones about it. And I don't think Grow SF will go for anybody other than Breed as well either, because I foresee a rupture in the moderate camp, separate and apart from the weirdness around Jay Chang and his supposed alleged coordination, is that Mark Farrell and London Breed are not similar politicians when you break down the nitty-gritty of it all, in that London Breed is more of an urbanist, or at least espouses urbanist ideas of building more housing, building everywhere, whereas on this stage, sitting right in the seat you're in, Mark Farrell told me we don't need to upzone every San Francisco neighborhood, which is code language to everyone who wants to hear it. And Aaron Peskin has his own record where the one time here where I asked him about his housing record, that was the one time he chose to go long and keep talking, and I think that was because that is definitely the area where he wants to tell the story.
Well, let's talk about housing policies. That is one of the major issues facing San Francisco. The city has to build 82,000 units by 2030, and we built about 7. Let's talk about their housing policies. As you start talking about Farrell, he wants to maximize building heights in the financial district, south of Market, Mission Bay, the denser part of the cities.
Because people are just lining up to live in the FIDI, right?
doesn't want to touch the west side. And he wants to lower the percentage you're required to have, was it 12% affordable
I think it's 12
housing
and a
now?
half now, yeah.
Yeah, he wants to lower it to 10, and it was just lowered from 16. And he's not surprisingly, a very business-friendly type of proposal from him. He's like, this is the way to stimulate more housing.
I mean,
He wants to also repeal the real estate transfer tax. So these are all things that he thinks, from a business perspective, this is the way you stimulate housing.
I've said this before. I foresee carryover that the candidates themselves don't even count on between Farrell and Peskin on the housing policy. And we can talk about what's morally right in terms of building housing during a shortage, but I think that most San Franciscans, when they vote, are not going to be thrilled about a billionaire who wants to put a luxury condo tower next to them and tell them to pound salt if they have any process here. So I think more people are going to not everybody is going to be a vociferous YIMBY when it comes to what could happen in their neighborhood. And so we will see where the people of San Francisco really line up on that. And telling people in the West Side it's time for you to pull your own weight might be true and it might be accurate, but it's not the way to win votes. Tell me what you think of me really is not really a winning message.
The mayor wants more 6 and 8 story buildings. She kind of changed that rather recently.
I have to say that the mayor's dissembling there reminded me of the opening scenes of Henry V, where they come through with all these amazing excuses as to why he was justified in invading France, when it's like, yeah, no, and you're not justified. Like, this is crazy. But this was an amazing turnabout. That my downzoning wasn't the downzoning. It was actually an upzoning that made, it was a semantic success, and it was a way of telling people. It was a nod and a wink to the West Side that that you have nothing to worry about really. But we'll see. We'll see.
Well, we can talk more about housing, but isn't it out of everyone's hands? It's in the hands of the Fed. If the Fed doesn't lower interest rates, nothing's getting built here.
Joe is 100% correct, and we can argue. When I asked Aaron Peskin, do you feel that your policies, retarded growth of housing in San Francisco, and he disagreed, I would say you probably not. You probably did do that. But on the other hand, after 2021, the money's not there. We could say, maybe before 2021, you probably cost us some housing. Now it really doesn't matter. This is not monopoly money, as you said, and the financing is not there.
He wants to increase rent control across the city, which is something nobody else is talking about that I know of. And he wants to run, this is something he just talked about the other day, housing bonds to purchase the missing middle housing. It's a way to get the government out of, or have the government be in the housing business as opposed to relying on banks and interest rates and such.
Well, this one wouldn't be taxpayer financed, so
wouldn't cost.
You wouldn't even have to go to the voter on that one. Yeah. So that actually sounds like a pretty interesting idea. As for rent control, nobody will profess to being against rent control. I would say that is not a winning position in San Francisco, which is what, 2/3 renters. Telling people I'd like your landlord to be able to jack up your rent and kick you out is not.
Is Mark Farrell talking about that?
He's not. No one will say they're against rent control.
No one's going to say they're against it.
But in this case, Aaron Peskin is the only one who said, I want to extend rent control to all the people who don't have it, and that would require a change in state law.
What about Asha Safai? I haven't seen much about his housing plan other than he wants to turn empty office space in the university. But that's nice, but that's going to not happen.
The phrase that keeps coming up about downtown is that there's no silver bullet, there's only silver buckshot. And I've never been shot by buckshot, of any sort, but this is an unsatisfactory answer. Downtown remains very empty, and I don't foresee people running back to the office, especially tech, where they don't have to.
Unless it's a first Thursday of the month, and then you can come to downtown first Thursdays. Okay, Joe's.
By the way, can you make the lines shorter for the food? I was out there last week.
We're working on it. We're working on it. I had a whole call today about it.
20 minutes for a Momo's.
The lines will be shorter next month.
So this is actually, the opportunity is there. You could probably have a Monte Carlo rally there because no one will get hit by the cars. As far as people being in the buildings, that will be harder. So what Manny is doing is great. the best beer is the beer that you drink in the middle of the street. It's fantastic to be outside. This is all the best.
I'm
you
bringing
know.
my own though next week. I'm
Yeah.
not waiting in line for a $10 beer. With all due respect,
It's a lot less than you pay at the ballpark.
this is true. This is true. But let's not use that as a bar. Okay, let's talk a little bit about crime. I'm always weirded out by people saying, I want to fire this person, I want to fire that person, before they even get into office. I mean, Farrell, it says...
Both Farrell and Safi want to fire the chief.
Yeah, Safi wants to fire the chief, he wants to fire the head of the Department of Health, and someone else.
Farrell wanted to fire the chief, the head of the department, and Jeff Tumlin, the head of Muni.
And they had him, that was, I think it was Ashes. Did he want to
Both
fire
of them.
Both
Yeah.
of them want to fire all three.
I think Grant Colfax might have come up in there as well. Frankly, I'd be shocked if the mayor doesn't want to fire the chief either. But
what is? I mean, is that any way to run a city? Just say, before you're going to come in, I'm going to fire everyone. Don't you want to?
That's not the first time that happened. And people who are coming in to change, that is often the case. I believe Angela Alioto many years ago, when she was a viable candidate, said that she would get rid of all the department heads. This is not abnormal. If you feel that the city's not well run, you could also say that the people running it are not running it well. That tracks, right? Where we have here on crime this is a fantastic discussion. It's almost like a Rorschach test, that among a certain subset of people, the fact that crime exists therefore justifies claims that in San Francisco we're living in a dystopian, post-apocalyptic world, like something out of RoboCop, which was never the case. So for the mayor, all the statistics she's touting now, they're all true. I have no reason not to believe that crime is improving, but the fact of the matter is that the crime numbers were not bad when she was, fanning the flames under Chesa Boudin's feet. Suddenly, the numbers are important. If I can take an aside here, when I asked Mark Farrell about this, he said, ask people how they feel. Ask people how they feel. So then I asked him, well, why are you in favor of bringing cars back to Market Street? He said, well, the statistics show it's no safer. It's like, so they matter, the statistics matter when it comes to people getting hit by cars, but not when it comes to people getting mugged or robbed, right? So, and I told him, but if you took the cars off the street, I would feel safer, right? So in this particular case, I do wonder, crime has become almost entirely something about vibes and your own personal experiences, and what people equate with chaos and ill feeling. It doesn't make people feel good to see lawlessness on the street, to see people who are obviously on dope, to see people lighting things on fire, to see people who are desperate and behaving in a desperate way. That's not necessarily crime. And San Francisco's violent crime is at historic lows.
And,
So
and compared with other cities of its size.
People talked about, the VC class said they were going to go to Miami. And it's, excuse me, say hello to my little friend, Miami. Things happen in Miami. It's Miami's violent crime rate is far higher than San Francisco. So is Dallas's. So is Houston's.
But
so are most places.
But everybody wants to increase the number of cops in the street. Everybody wants to fully fund. They're saying, oh, I want 6 police classes. I want 7 police classes. Everybody wants to. That is like, wasn't it? How many years ago we were defunding the police?
Well, we never did.
We never did, but we talked
never did.
about
We
it.
talked about it. You can put on, a fashionable scarf and take a knee, but that isn't defunding the police. And we never defunded the police. And police I've talked to have said, some of them will say we feel, disrespected, etc. And others will tell me, which I put more validity in, we don't know what our job is now, which I think is legitimate. And the police that I talk to have always told me, like, you tell me what to do and we will do it. And I respect that, and I think that is legitimate. As far as like, well, we don't know what our job is and we feel disrespected, so we're not going to do the job. I think that you can identify with this, and JD can identify with this, and Emily in the back can identify with this. They did defund my profession, and if I don't show up to work, I get fired. So I don't have much respect for that.
Lurie has an interesting idea about police. It's a nice idea. He wants to build workforce housing for first responders, offer rent subsidies so officers can live in the communities where they work, and offer child care and transportation support. Kind of like the housing for teachers we built, or didn't build. It's a nice idea, but we have a problem building housing.
We do, and do police want to live in this community? I don't know if they do.
Yeah.
And
a lot of them in Novato.
there's a lot of police in Novato, and there's or Ukiah or elsewhere.
Wow.
You know, I just wrote about the situation in San Francisco's jails.
Oh, it's, yeah,
You
it's
know,
very
people
interesting.
are living in the far reaches of California and coming down and working unbelievable hours, living in RVs outside the jail. It's not a good situation. So so if he can get the housing built, that'd be fantastic. But like, you know, first we have to deal with, do people want to live in this housing? And second, you know, can you get it built? And these are great ideas.
Yeah, they're not practical. One thing I want to run by you was what Aaron said about drug dealers, and this said this about a year ago when the famous out when they had a meeting at UN Plaza. He said, and this is sort of where he's come. I support arresting drug dealers and holding them accountable, but arresting drug dealers and doing nothing more is a cynical and dangerous policy that often results in more overdoses and not more treatment for addiction. He was responding to the mayor wanting to do more of that. Is that a progressive position? Is this Aaron moving to the center? What's going on here?
One of the reasons I think, Joe, and you probably thought this as well, is that Aaron's positioning put him where I think he was being honest when he was wavering over running for mayor or not, but he put himself in a position where he could. And it's not tenable in San Francisco to say, you know, there's people cynically slinging dope and folks are dying, but it's society's problem, so arrest them instead. You can't say, let's fix all the other problems before we get to this. So, you know, I think it's a very politically hard sell right now to say you shouldn't be arresting drug dealers. But on the other hand, what are you doing with them? You know, it doesn't make much sense to just put someone in jail and then have them get out and then have them go. It doesn't make much sense. And what he's talking about with increased deaths is true, because if you stave off supply partially like this, you just move people elsewhere to perhaps, you know, dodgier stuff. Everybody's tap dancing around the fact that the city's own plan for staving off drug deaths, which our goal, and this is sad, the goal was to reduce it by 15%. That is the goal. That is the strong goal, is to reduce it by 15%. So instead of 100 people dying, 85 people die. And instead of 1,000.
That put us under 600?
No, because it went up. I can tell you that my memory off the page that I wrote was that at the time I wrote it, it was up 41%. So that's not down 15%. So all of the plans call for supervised consumption sites. And that's something the mayor has said she will not do, and has absolutely reversed course. And I understand, you know, heavy lies the head with the crown. The feds have made it clear that it's still legal. I mean, I kid you not, the law that keeps you from opening up a supervised consumption site is literally called the Crack House Statute. So it would be treated on the eyes of the law the same as if you were having a municipal dope house. And if there were, in fact, a Republican attorney general, they could come after the city hard.
Exactly, and this is with a friendly administration in Washington. That's still not doing. All right, we're going to go to questions in a minute. And just one more thing: what are the biggest challenges each candidate faces? And I think we talked about a couple with Breed. Number one, her disapproval rating. Her Asian voters, 80% of them said they're disapproved of her. What about Mark Farrell? What's his biggest challenge? Is it being a white dude from the marina? In a multicultural city?
It's a strength and it's a weakness.
Yes.
And, you know, the electorate in San Francisco in November is going to be huge. It's going to be 85% of the people. And if it's not, then that's a bad sign for the rest of the state. But let's say it's 80%. There's going to be people out there who are really, you know, they don't know stuff. Like when I was talking to one of my son's teachers about, like, you know, I'm going to host an event with Aaron Peskin, and I said, well, which one's that? You know, a lot of people don't know when they just tune in.
The guy's been around for 25 years. Yeah.
I think most people know who the mayor is, but may not really be putting thoughts into, like, I blame the mayor for X, Y, and Z. So just the optics of a black woman with a Horatio Alger-like life story up against these, you know, wealthy white dudes or white passing dudes in Asha Safai's case is not a good look. And I think that, you know, that still doesn't hurt in this case.
Right. One of the mayor's first big fundraisers was all women. She wanted to go out. She wanted to consolidate behind her.
So Mark has his problems there. Mark has his own record that a well-funded opposition will fool around with. Mark was dinged for what at the time was the largest ethics fine in the city of San Francisco, and sued the city, and eventually they settled, and it was reduced. These are all things that will definitely be mailed to your house in broad color. Yeah.
Lurie, his greatest strength is his greatest weakness. He's gonna talk about how everybody else, I'm the only outsider here. Everybody else is connected to city government in some way. They're responsible for the San Francisco UC. I am not, but then again, I have not managed a $15 billion budget or with 35,000
I've never driven
people.
the bus before is not something you would ever want to hear from a bus driver. All these other bus drivers that don't stop for you and are rude and etc. Well, I've never driven a bus before. It's like, well, that's trouble. So that's going to take some talking, but people might go for that. Daniel Lurie, as much as all the research I have, he seems like a decent guy.
Very nice
and,
guy.
And that doesn't change, and that may be what people go for.
Peskin, we've talked about this, the duality of being around and knowing how city government works and for more than 2 decades. And then he's been around for more than 2 decades.
Well, to continue the bus driver analogy, this one is the guy who knows how to drive the bus the best, by far. But you know what? He may not take it where you want to go. So, even people who don't like Aaron will say he's very technically proficient, works hard, competent, but you just won't agree with his views. So if I think people will be faced with, do I want a guy who's technically proficient and knows his stuff, but I disagree with, and if what you disagree with is fundamentally something that you can't countenance voting for him, you won't vote for him. Plus, it was smart of Aaron to get out ahead of the arguments that he was a angry drunk by making recovery the base of his campaign.
Yeah.
That was a good idea.
Very nice.
But certainly there will be people, they will be coordinated attacks against him as a NIMBY warlord and as a person who yelled at people in City Hall.
NIMBY warlord. Oh my God. And then Asha. Asha's challenge is that he doesn't have as much money as the others. He doesn't have the name recognition, and
Asha's facing a tough road to hoe right now.
he no longer is the progressive lane.
Yeah, when Aaron Peskin declared Asha's lane kind of dried up because he was drifting to the left. He was vociferously against Proposition E, which reduced police oversight, reduced the criteria to engage in a police chase, hamstrung the police commission, clandestinely introduced facial recognition technology back into police cameras, things like that. And he was him and the ACLU were about the only people who were against that. So I guess the fact that we all could see polling that was going to win, this was probably his heartfelt position, so there's room for that in politics, right? And B, the people who voted against Prop E will remember that probably more than the people who voted for it well. But Asha has a tough road to hoe right now, and when those polls come out in the middle of June, we'll see where he is.
All right, let's hear some of your questions.
All right, before we get to questions, I have a gift for both of you.
Uh-oh.
Remember what I said?
I'm frightened.
The reason I was late was I was in North Beach, and so I have brought for you both, which you're welcome to eat, a cannoli.
Oh my God, this is dinner. Thank you.
Proof, yes. They have a little orange slice. Angie, where were these from? They were from some famous cannoli place.
Oh, thank you.
So here you
Thanks,
go.
bud.
And some napkins. You're welcome to eat.
We should probably wait till after we're
You can,
done,
or you
right?
can, if you're bored, you can eat. Okay, now you can.
Thanks, bud.
That was your present.
Okay, where are we going? Right there.
How important do you think the endorsements of Mark Leno, Jane Kim,
Thank you, former mayoral candidate George Davis.
Repeat the question.
He said, how important are the endorsements of Jane Kim, Mark Leno, and Tom Amiano?
Yes.
If they endorsed someone other than Aaron, it would certainly be quite a thing, right? So I would say that they're going to go to Aaron, and they might double endorse, and it would be, not getting them would foil a plan to consolidate the left.
Well, they were already there for his announcement.
Mm-hmm.
So is Art Agnes.
Yeah, so was Art Agnos.
Yes. Okay, right there.
Okay, at the risk of asking the dumbest question tonight, I'm just gonna go ahead and do it. who wakes up the Latino vote in the city? So I understand that Mayor Breed is in a fight for her life to get the Asian vote back. Great, kudos to her. Who wakes up the Latino vote?
What wakes up or
Who
makes,
wakes it up?
makes
Well,
up?
who wakes it up? So up and down the Mission, you see Daniel Lurie's billboards up and down. To give you like more insight into my brain posing this stupid question, yes, I understand that a significant portion of that population might be undocumented, but guess what? They have kids and they are all citizens and they all vote. Who wakes up that vote?
That's not a stupid question. That's a fantastic
very
question.
good question.
Yeah,
And
that's
it's-
a question.
I do wonder because shame on me. Latinos were very strongly against the mayor in that poll as well. There was no demographic that did well, but something that I've in my reporting, people have asked, will Aaron Pesca be able to branch out and get progressives of color? Will he be able to get Latino voters and Black voters? I don't know what his message is. I'm not sure what Daniel Lurie's message is. If you appeal to people through their children in public schools, that would have to be done delicately because the mayor doesn't control the schools. So I don't know. That is a demographic that is big and in play.
But they
self-organize. It's almost like they don't understand that entire sector of the city, and all Daniel Lurie has done, good or not, is literally translate his messaging that he gives at the Noe Valley Saturday markets on billboards. And the other candidates are nowhere to be found.
Well, at least he's doing that.
It's something to look into, and if only there was a small news website in the Mission. This is a good idea.
Get on that. But the candidates, as we said, are spending a lot of time in the Asian neighborhoods. That is the vote that everyone's going for. Go ahead. Question.
Here, let me give you the mic real quick, right behind you.
Oh, I'm sorry.
Can we talk about crime stats? The Chronicle recently published stats where actually Noe Valley was the only neighborhood that actually had an increase in reports, but the thing is, the police are only 700. It's supposed to be 2,000. During APEC, a lot of police were actually moved to downtown. I tried calling 911, impossible. So less police with reports, less numbers. So I'm a little suspicious about the stats. Just want to get your thoughts.
I mean, that's the perpetual question about crime stats. When you say crime's up, when you say crime, people report crime's down. Well, nobody files a police report. I mean, you can only report what the stats are. I mean, you can talk to other people. It's like but a lot of it's other reporting is anecdotal. But the stats are the stats. That's what people report. That's why report everything that happens to you, because so change can be made.
I think it is difficult to say that people aren't reporting property crime now and they were before. I think that property crime has been bad in San Francisco for decades, and because I can tell you that people, when I was an editor at SF Magazine, a decade ago, people were pitching these stories about car break-ins, and it's like, well, what's new? That's a 15-year-old story, and they ended up having to follow the cops that were doing bait cars and everything, and therefore that was the story. But to get to your question, I mean, it's very hard to compare stats and say like, well, this is when the stats were good and now they're not, because there's no scientific way to do that. And I think people do report violent crime. I think violent crime is only underreported among very marginal communities. And to be brutally frank, I don't think that the candidates or large numbers of voters are investing lots of time and concern into those communities. And so if you want to come out and say this is wrong and this is bad, that would be a good thing to do, but I don't think it's the basis of someone's campaign to say that there's a lot more violence among homeless encampments and it's not reported. I think that violent crime is heavily reported in San Francisco, especially if someone of means is attacked or robbed. So we can look at those numbers, and those numbers are what they are. You get into a bad spot when you have emotional responses to crime. Almost every law that is somebody's name law is probably misbegotten. And it is not right to tell someone who's a victim of a crime, statistically this is very rare. That's not the right way to do it. On the other hand, it's not a good way to make policy based upon things that are, very rare.
And that was the challenge that our former district attorney had.
He too late realized that he shouldn't do that, but also not all crime is the same. People react differently to a burglary than they do to a car break-in. Burglary, you feel more violated, and you need to. And also, crime moved around in neighborhoods in San Francisco during the pandemic, and people reacted differently. I think people got more surly than usual in San Francisco during the pandemic because people who don't usually rely upon the government functioning in order to get on with their lives were suddenly unable to live their lives because the government wasn't functioning. I know that it was very hard for me to get work done with 3 kids at home. I think other people were like that as well. So, I think I was a little bit, many people were perturbed at the behavior of the school board debating about changing the name of George Washington or Abraham Lincoln High School, at a time when there were 3 kids getting into fistfights behind me in the same room. So, I think
Many people were perturbed.
So not all crime is the same. But, we can look, my great fear, folks, is that we have become inured to statistics. And we have also become inured to any statement, even of objective truth from people we don't like.
That is the problem up and down with the facts. People don't believe facts.
So that scares me a bit.
Very. Was there a question over here somewhere? Any others?
All right, big guy.
All right, what's your
Here we
question?
go, I'm coming to you. You get the disco microphone. You want to take a second? Like, wait a second, and we'll come back to you? Okay.
You had a question?
So, since neither of you is running for mayor, what is the solution to our overdose epidemic?
You're gonna have a lot of time to think about your question.
A lot. Let's say a lifetime's worth.
I would say that we should listen to the health professionals of the city, and we're not doing that. And say what you will about safe consumption sites. That is what was recommended by the mayor's own health professionals, and is the basis of our plan. And it always struck me as a little bit odd, that the mayor's greatest accomplishment was San Francisco's performance during COVID, when I think this was commendable. She listened to the public health professionals and took their advice and didn't grandstand on this. And so to suddenly now say, I'm not going to listen to them, I can't say, this is the wrong thing to do, but I think it would require a little introspection and explanation. If you're not going to give people a chance to do drugs in a safer environment and out of the public view, you are going to be faced with people doing drugs in a more dangerous way and in the public view. And this has always been a problem in San Francisco. People have always been gobsmacked by the incredible desperation and poverty, right around the areas that people visit for conventions. That's not new. What's new now is that when people say I'm leaving, it suddenly has more of a physical impact. We want that business. It isn't just like there'll be more. So that's a very difficult question, but I would start with, listen to the experts and follow the science.
All right, Leo has his question.
What do you do when the person who has the least votes? How likely is it that the person who has the least votes that still gets picked for the next vote wins the election?
Yes. Maybe I should take that since I live in Oakland. That has happened. That's happened where the person who won the most votes initially did not win. And that happened in Oakland once about 14 years ago.
I can.
Is that what the question was?
So to go take this in a roundabout way, in all ranked choice voting, the person who finishes first wins about 9 times out of 10. And you can think of examples where it didn't happen, such as the one Joe brought up with Gene Kwan, such as Myrna Melgar in District 7. But if, as Leo was asking, has anyone who has ever been next to last come back and won? I'm not sure about that, especially in a mayor's race, where the people who are going to finish at the bottom, and there are more than 40 people running for mayor, the people who are running at the bottom will get very few votes. At one point, a fellow named Kenny Khan, who professionally goes by Kenny the Clown, ran for mayor in San Francisco, and he got 2 votes. And I assume he was one of them. So, so those people don't come back. But as far as I predict, you're going to see, Joe, you and JD and the rest have probably thought about what percentage is it going to take to win. And I would say if somebody gets 30% in the first round, they're in a really good spot. You just got to get 20% more while culling from the rest. And no matter how much, let's say for sake of argument, it's Aaron Peskin. No matter how much you send out mailers saying that he's the devil incarnate and this and that, it's not unrealistic for him to take 20% off all the people who are getting eliminated.
He could, I would say, 25, 30% even.
Yeah,
if depending on how much Sasha gets. But
that'll do it.
That's
All right, we have time for one more question before this ends.
I did. He answered it. There's somebody back here.
All right.
Thank you.
Hey, thank you, and thank you for doing tonight. This has been really, really interesting. So my question is this: when I listen to the candidates, I hear a lot about all the same topics that we're all inundated with. It's homelessness and drugs and all those things that we do care a lot about. I haven't heard any one of them talk about a vision for the city. I haven't heard any one of them say, what is it like to be a resident of San Francisco in 5 years after I've done my magic? What is it like for businesses to live in the city after I've done all this magic? Like, what do we stand for? What's our brand? Who are we? Why would you want to be here as opposed to Dallas or some other city? Is anybody talking about a vision of the future, or are they just reacting to all the negative, whack-a-mole things that everybody wants done?
I think the answer to your question is yes. They're doing both, but not as much as you or I or many people would like. Everyone says they love San Francisco, and that everyone has reasons for being here. Mark Farrell was born here. London Breed was born here. Daniel Lurie was born here. Other people came here. In San Francisco, it's a place where you can be who you are, and that's always going to be the case, hopefully. But the issues that are resonating with people are clearly not necessarily along those lines. But I think that you're not wrong. I think that it is a half vision if you don't point out, like, here are all these problems, and some of them have solutions, or at least ostensible solutions. And to be quite honest, no, I haven't. You bring it up. I don't know what anyone said. Here's what I want in 5 or 10 years.
No, you haven't heard that. Maybe a little bit in the mayor's State of the City address. There's a little bit of that, but let's face it. This is a triage job right now. This is a repair job. This is the city has a lot of challenges right now.
Wartime conciliary.
Exactly. So you want. That's why, and the issues they're talking about are the issues that are on every poll shows that homelessness, housing, crime are the issues that people are most concerned about. So that's why they're addressing those. I'm not going to talk about climate change and that, but because generally most people were of one mind on that. So that's why you're not hearing this isn't the shining city on a hill time. Of course, that line wouldn't probably go over very well in this town. But that's an excellent question. But we haven't heard much. I'm gonna defer. JD, have we heard much sweeping rhetoric on JD and Morris in the back, who's covers for the Chronicle, the mayor's race? We heard much soaring rhetoric.
Not as much as any of us would like. But I mean, I think it depends on who you ask. If you ask Mayor Breed that question, she talks about trying to turn San Francisco into a city that says yes more than a city that gets in your way all the time. Daniel Lurie talks a lot about trying to bring accountability back to City Hall and root out corruption and things like that. But no, otherwise, I don't think you're hearing a lot of grand.
Yeah, these are blocking and tackling type of issues. The approach to politics. Okay.
Yeah, nobody believes in a place called hope.
Let's give a round of applause to Joe and Joe. All right, I'm gonna, before you all leave very quickly, I'd like to ask for a public commitment from the Joes to come back 3 months out from the election and right before the election.
Yeah.
To give us, because this was so amazing. Do we want that? He said yes. Are you willing to do that? This is so wonderful. A couple upcoming events.
I should remind you again, this is double your money at admissionlocal.org.
There you go. That's what I was gonna say. So please sign up for.
Are there cannolis every time that we show up?
Sorry?
Are there cannolis going to be
No.
every time? This is just one
Maybe I'll
time
give you a
only?
different. I'll give you a different iconic San Francisco food. If you're not a subscriber to the Chronicle, if you're not a donor to Mission Local, please support these two amazing journalistic institutions. A couple events to bring to your attention. Tomorrow we have a double header. We have Gen Z for Change. Elise Joshi runs this organization, Gen Z for Change, and Elise is going to be talking about the campus protests and the perspective of these protests from the perspective of Gen Z, followed by a natural progression to Scott Wiener talking about AI regulation in the state. So it'll be an interesting double feature tomorrow night. We're going to continue with our one-on-one series with District 9 supervisorial candidates. I'll be interviewing Trevor Chandler. So if you're a D9 resident or interested in the D9 race, that's going to be on Thursday night. And then a couple more things. We have Kara Swisher on May 23rd. We're going to be the final stop on her book tour, The Burn Book, which is a New York Times bestseller. And then a point of personal pride, I want to let you all know that the largest Manny's event we have ever done is now sold out. It's sold out in 5 days, which is our own mayoral debate, which will be in partnership with City Arts and Lectures. It's going to be it's at the City Goldstein Theater, 1,700 people. 200 teachers and students will be in the audience for free, and it'll also be streamed on Zoom if anyone wants to join digitally. And the last thing I'll say, in addition to becoming a subscriber to the Chronicle and a donor and an avid reader of Mission Local, if you're not already a sponsor of Manny's, it's $36 a month, and what that money goes to, it allows this room to continue to be diverse socioeconomically, for us to let anyone in with no questions asked for free, to rent out the space for nonprofits and advocacy groups for free or at very low cost. We do it because of our monthly sponsors. I would really appreciate it if you would consider becoming one of them, at least through the election, so we can keep doing programming like this. Thank you so much. Why 36 is a magic number. Thanks to Joe and Joe. Have a good night. Thank you to Angelina and Veronica and Louise.